Despite a number of efforts over the years, motor racing and the big screen just really haven't clicked into gear. For some reason, I don't know why. Could be that they just don't meld together properly, they're not fitted together correctly in the pit stop of cross culture. Who knows? But for some reason, they just don't seem to have had the best relationship. But maybe that's about to change. Like an unexpected powerhouse tearing it up from the back and racing towards pole position. A little documentary you may have seen called Senna came out a couple of years ago, which of course charted the life and unfortunate death of Ayrton Senna, one of Formula One's most prolific drivers. It also opened the door to perhaps a more functional relationship between motorsport and the big screen, and taking that baton to open that gap and make that particular partnership somewhat more cohesive is the new Ron Howard film Rush. Now, I really should predicate the fact that I know very little about motor racing and in particular Formula One, as is the case with Rush, and I know even less about the story of James Hunt and Niki Lauda and sort of mid-1970s Formula One racing. So going into this film, I kind of went into it like a driver racing into a blind corner. I didn't know what to expect, and if you too don't know what to expect, don't worry about seeing Rush, because the thing is, you don't need to know what to expect. In fact, I would probably say the less you know about the story it's based on, the more you'll probably enjoy it. Unless, of course, you're a huge petrol head and a particular fan of this era, in which case you'll enjoy it for many different reasons. Rush, in a nutshell, primarily is a very simple story, but that is kind of why it works so well. It bases itself on two drivers, two very different drivers and two very different characters. One of which is Austrian-born driver Niki Lauda, played here by Daniel Bruhl, who you may know from certain indie films, and it really is a fantastic breakout performance for him, and I hope he goes on to do much bigger things on top of this, because he really is the main driving part, pun intended, of Rush. So Niki Lauda, as I said, Austrian driver who is very focused, very meticulous, very pragmatic and practical. He knows his cars inside and out. He comes from a linear heritage of professionals, but usually associated with law or business and not motor racing. And the fact that he wants to be a motor racer is kind of a disgrace to his family, but he's kind of been pushed outside by his family. And in a weird way, it's his way of protesting, albeit in a very practical and very stoic manner. He has no real personality to speak of. He is very professional. He's also very arrogant, and he's also very kind of off-putting, but in a really interesting way, not in a really smarmy, I don't want to watch this character, because you do, because he's kind of layered and complicated, as is his complete counterpart, British driver James Hunt, played here by Chris Hemsworth. Hunt is like Austin Powers meets James Bond, with long blonde forelocks and just a foreline for fame and drugs and celebrity and sex and champagne. And he's brimming with character, and he's also very arrogant and brimming with bravado. The two characters meet in the lower ranks of Formula 3 and begin their rivalry there. They kind of play off one another and their relationship continues, and as much as they are different to each other, they kind of meet in the middle, partly because of their arrogance and partly because of their love for the sport and kind of other similarities. It's funny because the longer it goes on, the more you see them becoming more intense rivals, but you also kind of see an underlying line of respect grow and develop as well, and that's what brings out the chemistry between both actors and both characters incredibly well in Rush. In fact, for a film about racing, it's quite strange to say that there is a lot of drama and a lot of tension and a lot of excitement that happens off the track, but also just as much when it gets onto the track and you get into the racing frame of mind and you get to see the cars going as incredibly and dangerously fast as they do. Howard throws the audience into this just unrelentless tsunami of sound and vision. The sound of this film is incredible, and if you can see it in cinemas, please do, because it is a film that really kind of, when it ups the ante and it throws you into the racing sequences, it's actually kind of scary and tense, because especially if you don't know what's going to happen, I'm sure if you know the outcome and the story of Rush and James Hunt and Niki Lauda, you'll have an idea of what's coming up ahead. But for those who don't, which is myself included, it just really adds to the tension, and it really is quite gripping at times. And it's because of the way that it's delivered, just the crazy camera angles that are in here. The cinematography by Anthony Mantle is amazing, probably one of the best examples of cinematography this year. And as I said, the sound just really really brings you into the race and literally into the car at times, which is a very, very scary place to be at points. It really is quite a visceral experience once the car's off the tracks. The film does have a couple of problems, one of which is that it takes a little while to kind of get going. It's a little slow to get itself into gear. I do realise all the descriptions are car-based, but when do you get these kind of opportunities? And there are a few broad strokes throughout, but for the most part, it's a really enjoyable drama, mainly because of the characterisation, the chemistry between the two leads, and just the visceral production value of the actual racing segments. It really does feel like the film that so many people have been trying to make for so long in terms of pairing cinema up with motor racing and Formula One, or just car racing in general. And it really kind of achieves what it sets out to. Granted, it has its minor flaws, which I covered, but for the most part, it's really tremendously enjoyable on two different levels. One is a purely adrenaline-based, visceral, visual, and sensory experience when on the track. The other is a more slow-paced, intimate character portrayal and a sense of chemistry working together. I'm going to give it a 7.5. Really, really like this film, and if you get the chance to see it in cinemas, like I said before, do, because that is the place to experience Rush.